Hello everybody and welcome. My name is Don Arleth and we are at day 2 of the Defence24 Days at Warsaw's National Stadium. And now joining me is Bartłomiej Kot, the director of the Warsaw Office of the Aspen Institute. Bartłomiej, great to see you again and thanks for joining us.
Great to be here with you.
Yes, now United States withdrawing 5,000 troops from Germany. There are warnings that the Tomahawk cruise deployments may not happen in 2027. If this is true, if this turns out to be true, what does that mean for us on the eastern flank?
So out of all these discussions related to the withdrawal of the American troops from Europe, the most important signal, if you may say this is beyond only a noise, if that's a real signal, it is indeed lack of those troops that were stationed, that was supposed to be stationed in Germany, and were related to the allocation of Tomahawk missiles to Germany. The Tomahawk missiles, given their range, are probably the most tangible deterrent in terms of the deep precision strike capabilities against Moscow. Imagine them being stationed in Germany. The range allows us to hit Moscow directly. This is the capability that is non-existent among the European allies at this point. So this is only the American capability that could be allocated for that purpose, and it was perceived as a tangible deterrent, something which we don't have in Europe at this point, and we're expecting to have. That was the decision made by Joe Biden. Of course, extremely related to the fact that the war in Ukraine is ongoing, but the reality when it comes to war in Ukraine haven't changed since then. So if President Trump indeed wants to limit the presence of the American troops in Germany, eliminating those capabilities, even as prospective capabilities from Europe, are limiting our deterrence against Russia.
Well, do you see maybe an opportunity for Poland in this? I know that President Nawrocki is trying to ask the United States if they're going to go ahead and pull them out of Germany, why not redeploy them closer to the eastern flank where the true danger really is?
Well, there are at least two arguments that you have to take into account. Of course, there is a strong interest from the Polish side to have Americans present in Europe. It doesn't matter whether that's Poland or everywhere else. Of course, it's preferable to have them in Poland because deep into our strategic thinking, the presence of American troops serves as the, let's say, insurance policy against the possible aggressive Russian posture against Poland or any other Eastern European countries. It is preferable from our point of view to have them stationed in Poland as the long-term presence, as a stable presence, not only ad hoc presence, as it was related extremely to the fact that the war in Ukraine is happening. From that perspective, the Polish objective has to be that whenever the American administration wants to limit the presence of their troops within Europe, Poland should do whatever it takes to preserve their those capabilities within the European theater. The question that appears is to what extent certain capabilities were ever designed to be stationing in Poland. Because the decision from the American point of view, the one that was related to the Tomahawk missiles, was not only related to the fact that they want to have their presence in Europe, but it was also extremely related to the fact where they are stationed. I do not believe that it was within the strategic thinking from the American side to have Tomahawk missiles that close to the potential front line as in Poland. So the question is whether the Biden's administration back then or Trump administration right now would ever consider to have those capabilities placed in Poland. So this is not a question about the number of troops, it is a question about capabilities. And if we go deeper into other aspects than not only Tomahawk missiles, it is in the interest of Poland to preserve especially those troops, the American troops that are right now in Europe, that have the, let's say, that have acquired knowledge how to operate within the eastern flank theater, that were part of trainings, especially in the Suwałki Gap corridor, and that have the long-standing knowledge right now how to operate here, even from the logistics point of view. So rather than focusing only on the numbers, I would actually focus from the Polish point of view on certain capabilities. Poland has a lot to offer to the US, even as compared to Germany when it comes to the burden sharing of the financial aspect of the presence of those troops. Poland has certainly a great bid to the US, so it's worth lobbying for that. But first and foremost, it is a question about the presence of what capabilities, and the priority should be in Europe, and if that's possible, in Poland.
In Poland, would Poland become more attractive to Washington? I heard Foreign Minister Sikorski talk about this $15,000 per soldier subsidy if the U.S. wants to transfer or deploy troops to Poland.
Well, of course, there is a lot of arguments that we can, put on table. Money is certainly well regarded from the Trump administration perspective. The question is, of course, as I stated in the previous answer, to what extent it is also allowed from the strategic point of view of the decision making on the Trump administration's side, because Poland is, of course, regarded as this model ally, that there is an interest of American presence in Poland. But let's be honest, I mean, it is a broader question. It's a question to what extent the U.S. presence in Europe is placed within, not only still needed, because it is needed, but in the long term, Europe has to take more responsibility for the conventional aspect of its own defense. From the Polish point of view, it's always, playing those two insurance policies. So yes, keep Americans in if that's possible, especially on focus on certain capabilities that are the deterrent against the Russian aggressive posture. But secondly, yes, build European solidarity, because in the long term, if anything happens to NATO, it is the European pillar that will be also, burdened by the response. It is Germany that will be burdened to, as we look at, to the response to the potential Russian aggression against Estonia, even Poland.
When we listen to Secretary of State Marco Rubio or Donald Trump, they've been highlighting that the problems with other European allies, that they haven't been able to use the bases that they already possess in Europe to do logistics and whatnot to the Middle East. And they say there's no point for us to have bases in Europe if we can't use them for our own strategic national interests.
Look, I'm not supportive to the answer that was given to the U.S. administration from countries such as Spain at some point of the war in Iran happening. But we have to take into account that the American presence in Europe serves not only the security of Europe, first and foremost it serves the American interest. The question is how the U.S. defines its own interests. If the U.S. defines its own interest as also being capable of having this global posture that is necessary for a country that wants to play the role of the superpower, then it has to have presence in terms of bases, troops also in Europe. Because if you want to be present in the Middle East, then you have to have like a place to park your vessels. You have to have a place to park your aircrafts on the road to the Middle East. So it's not only in the interest of Europe, so that the US is present here, but it's also in the interest of the US, even if you look at it from the angle of America First policy. Let us actually focus on which kind of capabilities are necessary, but also boost the European bid to have more responsibility for the conventional aspect of our defense. So it's a matter of talk that we have to actually have the proper substantive talk with the US administration. What are the expectations? What kind of burden we should take upon ourselves? But also what kind of capabilities are necessary to be sustained, because we have Russia, because we have the interest of the US to be present as a global superpower.
Now we have again, another annual summit coming up this year in Turkey for NATO. What do you expect to come out there? I mean, last year we had the big 5% announcement. What do you expect to see from the Europeans and from the Americans at this summit?
Look, the problem is that we got extremely used to the fact that each and every summit gives us a huge expectations and then a huge statements and something new happens. I mean, it hasn't been like that before it had not been like that before the war in Ukraine started. So we should actually get back to to reality also that was there war in Ukraine. Of course, we are expecting a lot of changes within the structure of NATO, which is also the result of the US perception of NATO. I can answer to that question in one sentence. It is something that I would not like to see from the US side. So I would not like to see from the US side the bid to make any divisions between the NATO European allies. So the divisions between those who pay more and those who do not pay more, divisions between those who are less supportive to the US warring against Iran and more supportive. So once the Trump administration starts dividing those European allies in different groups, the solidarity that is necessary for response of NATO as a whole becomes hurt, and then actually it can hurt the whole alliance.
One more follow-up on that, because there is a tightrope that many nations here in our region, Poland, the Baltics, Czechoslovakia, others, there's kind of a tightrope between between European solidarity and bilateral relations with the United States. How does Poland navigate that tightrope?
Oh, that's an elephant in the room, honestly speaking. Of course, it's a bit of our luck, I would say, at this point, that we have actually the president and the government they're from two different political camps. So the president clearly has even the ideological support that is from the Trump side. The government is more focused on the European solidarity. From my point of view, as an expert in security and foreign policy, this is not bad reality actually, that you can play those two camps at the same time. That is because, as I said, I mean, we need to have those two insurance policies. Once we have to invest, of course, in the European solidarity, because that will be the, say, forefront of our response against Russia. But it is delusional to think right now that only Europeans are capable, or Europeans alone are capable of responding to the Russian threat. So as long as we can actually, by the matter of fact or reality on the ground, play two camps, that better for us. What we do, though, in Poland, that is, I guess, even right now, beyond any political doubt or discussion, is that we invest in our own security. And this is something that I could advise to every single European nation. You want to have good cards when you discuss with Trump, pay your own, pay for your own security, get your own capabilities. If you want to be more deterrent against Russia, build your own capabilities. And this is the best insurance policy that I can ever have. And once we are stronger as Europeans, we are more cooperative as Europeans, then even for those guys who are right now, on the fence, shouting that Europe should be more autonomous in relationship with the US, this is a great cause. I mean, you have to have your own capabilities before you even discuss with the Trump administration. So having cards, saying that in the Trumpian way, it's good for both those who think that Trump is right on Europe and those who think that Europe should be more self-sustainable.
Exactly, okay. All right, Bartłomiej Kot, Director of the Warsaw Office at the Aspen Institute. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you.
And that concludes this talk here from Defense 24 Days at the National Stadium in Warsaw. Thanks for joining us, and see you next time. Goodbye.